Hi everyone, my name is Charlie, and today I want to give you a writing update. This is really a sequel to my video, Giving Up on Writing. I have struggled to make this video for a really long time because I have had this constant fear that should I talk about my writing and give any more writing updates, that any writing I'm doing at the moment will stop and I will never write again, and very strange, irrational fears have come to the forefront in the last few months. And it's great. It is great to explore this new part of Charlie, but I try to live this life with as little fear and as little guilt as possible. So for this to come up was really not conducive to how I want to live my life as a writer, a reader, and just a general human being. So therefore, I have chosen to make this video, and everything be damned if I don't end up writing again. So I stopped writing in January for the reason that I was now filled with incredible anxiety whenever I wrote. I was scared of writing. I could no longer look at the page without being filled with this dread and this unfathomable sadness. At the time, I questioned whether it was the January blues. And then I realised that it had actually been going on for quite a while and that I'd just been ignoring it. So I want to explain the reason that all of this dread, this sadness and everything came up. Now it is in relation to our Doris, and it's kind of part of the reason that we gave up writing for a few months there. What happened was I released Doris a year ago. At the time, because I hadn't written in a few months prior to releasing the book, because I finished it in February and then was editing it, getting the cover right, ordering proofs and all of that fun stuff before the book actually came out. And then I was trying to get into libraries and other avenues to promote the book and to read the book to an audience. So therefore I hadn't written for quite a while, as well as having work and all this other stuff as well, and trying to maintain my reading and all this. I was juggling a lot of things at the time, so I hadn't really thought about writing. Then there was a cooling off period from about August to October where I didn't really have many readings. I still had readings, but they weren't happening so often, and that's certainly the case now. I'm still having a few events every month, but they're nothing like those first few weeks of promoting Doris were. Then I decided, well, I need to get a start on book 2, because I had seen it said a lot that once you independently publish one book, you need to have the next one ready within 3 months. And I mentioned this in my last video, and I said about how I'd intended to maybe bring out a book of poetry and lyrics in November, and I didn't do that. If I want to release a book, I want it to be perfect. In my opinion, Doris was perfect for the time when I was writing a year ago, and I'm very glad to have written that book, released the book, and I'm really proud of the book and the response that I've got. So then I decided I couldn't half-arse anything, and I wasn't going to half-arse a book of lyrics and poetry. I was going to dedicate myself to the second Doris book, because I have always had a plan for 3 Doris books, and other books set within the same world. So I'd also considered writing a cosy crime novel, which I still intend to write, but I decided that if I was going to write this series of Doris books, I want all the Doris books to come out first, and then I will go back into the world. And also, I don't want to be writing so many different series at the same time. Now, the problem I'm going to talk about is kind of like, it's a great problem to have, but also very difficult when you're quite a young writer like me. I like to say that I'm young because, you know, every day I get older and every day I'm no longer a young writer. And so reviews started coming for Doris. And there aren't many reviews. You can go to Goodreads, you can go to Amazon, you'll see there aren't actually that many reviews for Doris. That's fine. The problem that I found was that my first review was a 5-star review. Now I know it was from a friend, but I got a 5-star review from my friend, and then I got a 4-star review from someone I don't know, and 3-star reviews, and I was seeing these reviews come in, and even though there were only a few, I was also going to events, and I was reading to people and getting good responses from them and they kept coming over and talking to me about the book and discussing the book, and it just kind of added to this extra weight on my shoulders, because I kept thinking, well, now I have to write a book that's better than Doris. And I've been getting a really good response for Doris, so if I have to write a book that's better, then that means I have to surpass something that I don't know if I can surpass, because Our Doris is a book written in a very stylistic way, and it's a series of monologues, and they're comedic monologues, and I feel like I put my all into the book, and will I be able to do the same thing for the sequel? And I kept writing stuff down thinking, oh no, this doesn't work. And I am now having to ask for constant reassurance. It got to January, and I hadn't really written anything, and I kept saying to people, I'm writing the sequel. This is going to happen, this is going to happen, I'm going to do this. And as I say all the time, when you talk about your writing so much, it's a clear sign that you aren't actually doing much writing. Then I went and I read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert after reading Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. And both those books, Furiously Happy brought me out of this sadness, and it made me want to read again, and then I read Big Magic straight after that, and that made me want to take the break, because there's a part in that where it mentions a man standing up and saying that he finds writing difficult, and the man says, well, if it's that difficult, it's that painful, don't do it. If it's that traumatic, don't do it. And I was like, well, I'm going to take a break then. And I haven't really ever taken a break from writing since I was about 11. I've said I was taking breaks, and there have been periods where I've just pottered around writing little snippets of stuff, but I've never actually taken a break where I put all of my writing away and I just focused on the reading, and the reading of craft texts. And that was in the middle of January, and I'd planned to not write until March, and I wouldn't listen to the creative voice in my head. I avoided inspiration completely. And then I said I would only write for the writers group, and it was one of those things where you kind of had to ease yourself back into it. And so I would write the writing bursts at the workshop, and I would focus on what was being said at these workshops. But then once I left, I'd close the book and I wouldn't look at anything I'd done. And I still haven't looked at anything that I wrote this year. There was a long period there where I wouldn't actually speak to people about what I'd written. I wouldn't read out what I had written, because I didn't want anyone to comment on it and say, oh, this is good, or influence me in any way. I just wanted nothing to do with writing for that amount of time, which is difficult being the secretary of a creative writing group and a writer with a book out there in the world. So I gave up. And then in March or April time, I didn't make any videos in March, so I don't think it was March, I think it was April, I happened upon this idea. I can't write on my computer at the moment. All of Doris, the majority of Doris, was written straight onto my computer, and if I get into difficulty, I'll get the pen out, write in a notepad. But since I started writing again in April, I can only write down in my notebook. I have to have my notebook there, my pen, and that's the way I go about it. And I write in really scruffy handwriting that can be illegible to myself, and I get words wrong, make a ton of spelling mistakes, and that's how it goes. With the constant use of this new notebook, it's fallen apart. It's lost its cover. I did this thing where I decided that I would write one page an evening. I began by writing poetry, and it's not the best poetry in the world, and I wrote this poetry, and that was it. And poetry was a very good thing for me to be writing at the time, because there is a great feeling of completing a first draft. It's a quick release, so you've written the first draft of a poem, and then if you want you can just throw it away, but you still get the feeling of accomplishment that you get when you finish a really long work, well, after like each chapter. I did an event this weekend, so these poems are all typed up. So there are about 30 poems here that I have written since March. I filled up about half of my notebook with Doris, the second Doris. I lay down at the end of the day and my pen was there and I just started writing. And I I just wrote whatever came into my head until I completed a page. And then the next day I did the same thing, and that is the way I've gone about it. And it has kind of meant the writing style has changed, but it has made it a lot easier for me because I can't distract myself by doing anything else. When I'm on the computer, there's always the thought, well, I'm finding this difficult, I'm finding writing difficult, so let's go on YouTube for a second and we'll watch that video we wanted to watch earlier. And so then you watch that video and you think, well, I'll watch another video then. And double speed is just a godsend, but also it means that you think that you can watch a lot of videos a lot faster. So I'll be on YouTube and I'll go on there to watch one 3-minute video, and 4 hours later I have seen the entire backlog of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 6, and then watch lip sync battles from earlier seasons and booktube videos, and then decided to watch some 90s pop because that's what I watched, that's what was on when I was younger, and trying to remember lyrics to things. And it's just kind of like, really? This is what I want to be doing with my life? And as I said, I try to live without guilt. So it's been the thing of saying, well, I entertain myself with that, so now we have to write. And so I'm now halfway through the third monologue, which means I'm kind of working at this whole a monologue a month thing, which is probably about, it was 8,000 words last month and 4,000 words the month before, and this month so far we have 3,000 words, and I know we're in the last week of June and we've had 3 months of writing, and it's a very slow process at the moment for me. And a lot of other writers write a lot faster, but you can't measure yourself by other people's abilities to write quickly, and that is something I'm having to learn, and I'm having to constantly remind myself that the first Doris book is the first Doris book, and people will like or dislike that book. It just so happens that the people who have reviewed it at the moment have been, the majority have been quite close to me, so that's the reason it's been getting higher reviews than would come from the general public. Therefore, when I remind myself of that, I can then go and I can write Doris 2 completely free of any self-doubt. And I know that being a writer, there is always going to be self-doubt, and I can try as hard as I can to try and get rid of it, but that will never happen. So I'm writing a lot slower than I was before, but I'm perfectly okay with that because I am finally writing again. And even though I have to write down in my notebook and it's twice as long for only half the output, at least I'm writing. So if you want to discuss anything about my writing or anything, please do so down below. As I mentioned in a previous video, Our Doris is currently 20% off from my website, and I will include a link somewhere down there. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.